Alright, what's up people? Today we are going to break down Casimero versus Butler. This is going to be a pre-fight analysis, and I am going to demonstrate, or I'm going to show you guys some techniques that Paul Butler uses and how this will affect his fight with John Real Casimero. So let's get right into it. I just want to make sure that we are doing this in slow motion so that you guys can see every detail. I always forget to do it. So the first thing that we'll see with Paul Butler is that whenever he exits, he doesn't step straight back, okay? So a typical boxer right here, after he throws his combination, he's gonna step straight back. But what Paul Butler does is he steps out at an angle. And this is a basic, fundamental technique in almost all martial arts. This is shown in Taekwondo, this is shown in karate as well. You are ought to move out at an angle, okay? You are not meant to step straight back because you can be susceptible to other shots. So just see this one for yourself. It's gonna move out at an angle instead of moving out straight back, which is what a lot of boxers do. And that gets them trapped to the ropes. So what Paul Butler does is that after he steps back, he moves out at an angle and he moves laterally. Okay, let's see some more examples here. He's gonna step back once again. And instead of stepping straight back, you're gonna notice an angle from him, and he's gonna step back, and then he's gonna step back at an angle here. He's gonna move laterally to stay away from the firing spot or the firing line. Let's see this one more time, or let's see another one, I should say. So again, he's gonna engage first, he's gonna exit, step back, and then instead of stepping straight back, he's gonna move laterally with it. And that prevents him from getting to the ropes, and that prevents him from getting cut off easily. Now, I think Casimero has already learned his lesson with Regendia, okay? And he's gonna do a much better job trapping his opponent. He's gonna do a much better job cutting off the ring. And although he already has that skill, this fight is gonna be much more improved, especially with his brother, Jason Casimero. And so I think this particular exit strategy for Paul Butler that he normally uses after he throws his combinations is not necessarily going to work, because Casimero is really good at trapping guys to the ropes no matter how great of a mover they are. If you want to look at an example, just look at his fight with Charlie Edwards, right? He was constantly trapping Charlie Edwards to the ropes, even though Charlie Edwards had decent lateral movement. So this is the first thing that I want to point out. The lateral movement of Paul Butler will, first of all, tire him out. It will really tire him out, and then secondly, that lateral movement is not going to work against a guy like Casimero, because he's going to set some traps in order to catch you on your way out. So you won't be able to escape him all night long, okay? So that's the first one. Now let's look at this check hook. So over here, you're going to see him step back and then throw a short check hook right there, which works against guys who are squared up. So as you can see here, the guy's squared up, so he threw a check hook and then he was able to land that one. Let's see this one. Let's see another one, I should say. He's going to throw a check hook once again. No, it's not that. Let's play it way back so that we can see. So let's see this check hook. Boom. Or no, that's actually not a check hook. That's a left hook that he did as an attack. So it's not a check hook. It's just a left hook used as an attack. Now, why will this not work against Casimero? Well, Casimero has a bladed stance, and like I said, if you are facing somebody with a bladed stance, you have to throw the hook long. If you notice the way Paul Butler throws his left hook, it's very short and tight. And I know a boxer from the UK who also has the same habit of throwing the hook short. This is a teaching that they have in the UK. You have to throw everything short and tight. The problem is that when you face somebody who has a bladed stance, then that short hook is not going to land, it's going to fall short. And so at some point you're going to have to learn how to throw it long, how to throw it from a far distance. And that's what Paul Butler doesn't have. He throws his hook short. It works against the guys that he fights because they are squared, right? And the right side of their face is closer. But what about a guy like Casimero who's bladed? It's not going to land as frequently. I'm not saying it will not land, I'm just saying it's not going to land as frequently, because Casimero's face is further away compared to this guy that he's currently fighting on this footage, I should say. So let's look at the inside slip counter that he does on the jab. Again, this is a way for him to set up the hook. So as you can see here, his opponent is going to throw a jab, he's going to close the distance. So what we're going to see here is that he's going to bait, or he's going to wait for his opponent to throw a jab first. And by throwing a jab, now his opponent is closer to him, right? And again, this is going to be a follow-up to what I said a while ago, where Paul Butler throws his hook short. This enables him to throw the hook short because your opponent is essentially doing the job for you already. right? They are already throwing a jab, they are already closing the distance, and so you won't really have to throw the hook from a far distance. You won't really have to throw it long anymore because your opponent close themselves in, or they close the distance, and now all you have to do is really to slip inside and then counter him with that left hook. Let's see this one again. It's gonna be a jab, and then he's gonna slip inside. The opponent already did Paul Butler a favor by throwing a jab and then stepping into it, getting closer to him. So at this particular point, Paul Butler doesn't really need to throw the hook or the uppercut long anymore because the opponent is now closer. And the opponent already committed on a shot that was able to put him closer to Paul Butler. So now the reason why, again, this will not work against Casimero is because Casimero doesn't have a fucking jab, okay? And he doesn't really commit on his shots as much. It doesn't really commit on the jab as much. If he does throw it, it's gonna be like a snap-in jab. So there's not gonna be a lot of opportunities for Paul Butler to execute his slip counters. The guys who are able to counter Casimero are the ones who are distance-based. Okay, so they step back and then they throw their counter shots. Paul Butler is more of a block and counter, and he's more of a slip and counter kind of guy. He doesn't really do a lot of distance work. He doesn't really do a lot of step back counters. So for that reason, it's gonna find a hard time countering Casimero. Okay. Now let's look at his high guard, which is really dangerous because if you look at a lot of his fights where he got dropped, he mostly got dropped with uppercuts. I think against Zolani Tete, he was dropped by an uppercut as well. And it's because his high guard is meant to protect the side of his head. So as you can see here, he's protecting the side of his head, he's blocking all of these shots, right? But then the problem is that he's vulnerable for the uppercut. So a great fight to watch this is the Joet Gonzalez versus Emmanuel Navarrete fight. Okay, Joet Gonzalez did a really good job of protecting the side of his head. However, he was susceptible to the uppercuts coming down the center. And he was susceptible to shots that are coming down the center. So as you can see here, notice how good Paul Butler is at protecting the side of his head, but the center of his head is really open for uppercuts and straight punches. And I don't know why this guy never took advantage of it. Yes, there were times where he landed some shots down the center. However, it wasn't very frequent, okay? So this guy wasn't able to take advantage of that, but Casimero has some great uppercuts. He has some great straight shots that's gonna come down the middle. So I think if they fight, he's gonna catch Paul Butler with a lot of unpredictable shots, and he's gonna break that guard pretty easily. So again here, you can see the angle, right? He protects more the side. He protects the side more, I should say. And as you can see, the positioning of his gloves is really meant to protect the side of his face. And over here, when his opponent threw a left hook to the body, he dropped that right glove, and then he decided to pivot away. And you're actually gonna see a footage of him getting caught with something down the center later on. So again, here you're gonna see that, right? Protecting the side of his face, not much emphasis on the center. And what he does to make up for this is he turns his head. But the problem with that is that when you turn your head from that high guard, this is gonna be much harder to see your opponent because your only line of vision is facing straight ahead. If you turn your head while you're at that high guard position, you can't really see anything anymore. So now let's see him getting caught with an uppercut from that high guard that he has, which protects more of the side of his face. As you can see here, the gloves, the two gloves, it protects the side of his face, but what about the center? There's nothing protecting the center. And Casimero will really take advantage of this because Casimero is great at exploiting high guard. He's great at breaking the high guard. If you don't believe me, go ahead and watch his fight with Yamashita and also watch his fight against Duke Maika. You saw how easily he broke the guards of those guys by throwing hooks over the top, by throwing uppercuts, by throwing straight right hand. So just see this one for yourself. He's gonna get caught with an uppercut, boom, right there. Snap the back of his fucking head, and then another uppercut right there, okay? He's very susceptible to those shots coming down the center, and I don't know why this particular opponent did not throw it as much. Maybe it was because he was more of a hooker than an uppercut dude, so he wasn't able to take advantage of it fully, but there were times where he landed it, right? Just like in this sequence. He was able to land those uppercuts, and Casimero will make Butler eat uppercuts all night. That's my prediction. I think he's gonna land some uppercuts from weird angles, and eventually he's gonna stop him with a series of hooks or with a series of uppercuts. One of those two. It's not gonna be a straight punch that's gonna end it. It's not gonna be a body shot, in my opinion. I think it's gonna be an uppercut or a hook coming from either side. So yeah, that's one vulnerability that Butler has. Now, another weakness of Butler that I can really see is it's so easy to push back, man. And against a wrestler and against a guy who is very good at smothering like Casimero, you cannot be easily pushed back. He's gonna bully you all night, he's gonna put you on the ropes all night, and he's gonna throw shots from weird angles that you can't see it coming. And if you look at Butler, man, he's just so easily pushed back, as you can see here. His opponent easily smothers him, his opponent easily pushes him to the ropes. And man, imagine if this is Casimero right here. He's just gonna trap Butler on the ropes all night long. He's gonna land shots from weird angles. And Butler just doesn't have that lower body strength in order to stop the bullying tactics of Casimero. I don't think he has that strength in order to withstand the bullying and the smothering tactics of Casimero. I think in the later rounds he's gonna get broken down, and he will be stopped at around round 6 to round 10, in my opinion. Okay, maybe even earlier than that, but I think Butler has enough skills in order to withstand or in order to avoid getting knocked out in the early rounds. I think he's going to use his lateral movement. I think he has some decent blocking skills, but once Casimero is able to see those angles, and once Casimero is able to see those openings on the high guard of Paul Butler, it's going to be night-night. It's going to be over. So that's my prediction for this fight. I'd go with Casimero by TKO. And man, I wish they would have given Casimero somebody else, but this is a mandatory. It is a pretty skilled fighter. I'm not going to say Butler isn't skilled. He definitely has snap on his end. He definitely has speed on his hands. He definitely has some decent combinations, decent counter punching, but it's just not going to work on the style of Casimero. Okay, it's not going to work against the style of Casimero. So that was it. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you guys soon. Peace out.